So, if the Earth is flat, why do we say Australians are down under?
That's just conditioning. That's straight up conditioning. In fact, we have a hard time. Our community has a hard time breaking out of that because there's so many sayings, especially the down under and down here and down there. Even in America, when we're driving from Seattle to California. Oh yeah, we're going to drive down to California. So, and people forget, it's like, even if it was a globe, why is this the top and Australia's the bottom? But that's a whole other thing. It's like,
could you demonstrate on your object where Australia is?
Oh, it's still there. I don't know if you can see it.
Whereabouts is Australia on that?
It's right down. You can see it. It's off to the.
And it's all just flat, and then the dome at the top is like the atmosphere, is it?
Yeah. Which goes into a whole nother thing, which is, why is our atmosphere still here? I have to get this argument out because it's the one I love more than long distance photography.
Well, can you answer that? And also, why, when you get to the end of the sphere, don't you walk off the edge?
Boats are gone, and they're gone forever. You should never be able to see them again. But with HD technology, again, this is post-grunge music. With HD cameras, now you can zoom into the distance and you can pull these boats back into frame. Number one. Number two, vacuum versus gravity, meaning there's no way a pure vacuum of space would not rip off the atmosphere. And I could give you an example on that. Number three would be the moon temperature, which is the moon is generating a cold laser light, which just blows me away, meaning it's colder in the moonlight than the moon shade, up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Number four would be the eclipse shadow, kind of tying into Sean's question earlier, which is why is the eclipse shadow so small? If the moon is 2,000 miles wide, why is the blackout zone only 70 miles wide, which is roughly what we kind of say the moon is in size? And five would be the Van Allen radiation belt question, which is, okay, if the Van Allen radiation belts deadly? Yes or no? If they are, then how the Americans get through them with no shielding whatsoever, and nobody died, nobody got radiation poisoning. There's still four of these guys limping around today. And if they are not deadly, then why did NASA make this wonderful program saying, oh yeah, we can't test our Mars program capsules because there's too much radiation and people would die? There you go. That's the five questions I threw at this astrophysicist out of Georgetown University, and he just folded. Nope, not doing this. Going home.
Right. Well, that's all very technical, and perhaps some of the viewers are.
I know, I can make it easy for them.
Let me ask you some questions. Just get some basics here.
Okay.
What shape do you believe the Earth is then? And looking at it from space.
What space?
If it's flat, is it like a 45-inch single with UK on one side and Australia on the other?
Here, hang on.
If you've got questions, viewers, as well, please put them in the chat. And Ash is currently collating.
There you go.
So you believe that the Earth is like a snow dome, the shape of a snow dome?
Yep. That's about as easy as it gets right there. And by the way, when you said, it's floating in space, what space? Why does there have to be space?
Like pictures taken from space that show the shape of the Earth. But wouldn't pilots, as they reached the base of the snow dome, airplane pilots, wouldn't they have to seriously adjust their flight trajectory to go down
not normal pilots, because you're talking about something that's very, very huge. This thing is so big, and I know it's a small little model, and I could bring out a bigger model, but you can look these up. The dome of this thing would be so high by comparison. I mean, even if it was, say, 3,000 miles high, well, commercial aircraft cap out at about 10 miles. Spy planes, if you believe them, cap out at about 20 miles. So they don't have to do anything. There's this wonderful video by Neil deGrasse Tyson, the world's most famous scientist, not knocking Brian Cox. He's number two. Which is, he said that, there was a Red Bull jump that happened some years ago. And the Red Bull, they sent this guy up in a balloon, right? Put him in an astronaut suit and had him jump out at 130,000 feet. It's not that high. It's only 20 miles. Well, the pictures they took showed this massive, massive curvature. And Neil deGrasse Tyson comes out and goes, yeah, it's scientifically dishonest. Now, he hates flat Earth, but he said this. He goes, you can't see the curve from 130,000 feet. So why is Red Bull doing this? And it's like, well, the images. I've talked to producers, and I asked them, why do you run those Red Bull images? And they go, well, it's good television. They're good images. They're dramatic. They show this massive curve. I go, but it's not real. You know, we don't care. It gets viewers.
So one of our viewers, Ari, has pointed out that if it were the shape that you're proposing, that perhaps satellites wouldn't be able to work because they're programmed to orbit a spherical Earth.
Look up something called the High Altitude NASA Balloon Program. They've been doing this since the 50s. NASA is the world's largest producer and consumer of helium in the world. A lot of people don't know this. They can launch balloons, and it's not secret information. They can launch payloads of upwards of 4 tons, which is, and I'm not going to do the conversion for you guys, roughly 8,000 pounds. You know, that's more than a couple cars. And they can do this with balloons, pennies on the dollar. And they can keep them up there. It's not like weather balloons where they just go up and they burst and they come back down. They can keep them up there for years, which also answers a big question of ours, which was, if you remember the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock, you know, the concept was, oh yeah, a satellite ran into another satellite, and then it just became this cascading effect, and the whole sky became this thing of jagged metal. It's like, that would have happened already. In fact, it would have happened many, many times. So why hasn't it? Why haven't we seen this cascading effect of satellites? It's because they're not rotating its ball. They're just freaking balloons, and you can see them go down. We got wonderful videos. They go down every once in a while, and they get picked up really quickly and quietly and taken away. No one wants to talk about it. It's brilliant.
I'm interested, I think, on almost a philosophical level. The first thing you said when I asked why you believe the Earth is flat was the ancient cosmologists, I think you said.
Yeah.
Why give them more weight and credence than modern scientists with all the science and you know, they didn't even have electricity, but those ancient cosmologists, they can't have been that smart.
Well, no, but at the same time, everyone was on the same page. Meaning, you have, you know, governments that weren't communicating, you know, back in the day when it was just horses and ships, and yet they were all seeing and drawing the exact same thing. That was, you know, that when I was looking at that, I was going, okay, why is everybody looking at this the exact same way? It's like, oh, because they were all ignorant. They couldn't read and write, and it was like they were just observing the stars, you know, going over in the sky. And yet, if you watch a time lapse video, not much has changed since then. If you watch a time lapse, type in like Star Trails time lapse. When you watch that, you can't break out of the illusion. When you're watching that, it's like, you know, because of science tells you that it's like, oh, we're moving, not the stars. But when you watch it, it's the stars that are moving. So why isn't the easiest answer the best answer in this case? Why aren't the stars moving? Why, you know, why? It's like, because NASA told us so. It's like, oh, you mean the Americans? And by the way, I have to bring this up because I know you guys are out in England, right?
Yeah.
You're in England. So Americans believe absolutely, because, you know, it's a patriotic duty that we went to the moon, and, you know, we were the only ones. We planted the flag. Go, rah, rah. We're the best. Why did you guys believe it? And every time I ask this, the knee-jerk response is almost inevitably the same, which is, oh, because it was on television. Because the Americans put it on television and go, because we don't lie about anything ever. We, especially our governments, we never lie. Americans, oh God, we're so honest. Come on, you don't believe that. And by the way, that also, we left in 1972. Why didn't anybody go back? And I have to give the British credit. I have to give the UK credit, because all these other countries got into a space program, right? There's a Japan space program, and Russian and the European Union and stuff. England never got into it. Why not? Because they were smart. That's why. Remember, don't forget the James Bond film where they made fun of it, where Sean Connery's running across the fake moon set. It was brilliant. And the astronauts couldn't catch him because they were still in character. They were running in slow motion. Awesome.
But aren't they sort of making fun of you, Mark, with those when you see satirical sort of things in TV shows and movies and things? They're making the joke is that some people really believe this was faked.
Sometimes it's a joke, and sometimes I think they're doing a wink to the camera. Going all the way back to the wonderful documentary by Stanley Kubrick, yes, which was about Stanley Kubrick, called Room 237. Where he supposedly built into The Shining the entire his involvement in the American fake moon program, which is, why not? And by the way, I don't blame him. Every director would have gone for it. If the government comes to you with a blank check and says, oh yeah, we'll give you unlimited money to do this, but you can't tell anybody, who wouldn't go for that?
So if the Earth is flat, why do we say Australians are down under?
That's just conditioning. That's straight up conditioning. In fact, we have a hard time. Our community has a hard time breaking out of that because there's so many sayings, especially the down under and down here and down there. Even in America, when we're driving from Seattle to California, oh yeah, we're going to drive down to California. So, and people forget, it's like, even if it was a globe, why is this the top and Australia's the bottom? But that's a whole other thing. It's
Could you demonstrate on your object where Australia is?
Oh, it's still there. I don't know if you can see it.
Whereabouts is Australia on that?
It's right down. You can see it. It's off to the...
And it's all just flat, and then the dome at the top is like the atmosphere, is it?
Yeah. Which goes into a whole nother thing, which is, why is our atmosphere still here? I have to get this argument out because it's the one I love more than long distance photography.
Well, can you answer that? And also, why, when you get to the end of the sphere, don't you walk off the edge?
Oh, because you can't. There's nothing to walk off of. I mean, no matter where you go in this model, and again, you can look this up, and I don't know if you want to do screenshots right now. But no matter where you go in this model, you're going to run into ice and snow and more ice and more snow, no matter which direction you have.
And what would happen if you did get to the edge? Just a wall?
Well, that's just it. One of the big misconception is that Antarctica is the end of the world. No, it's the beginning of the end. Meaning the Antarctic coastline isn't the edge. It's not like the Game of Thrones, this big ice wall. Although it is a very high ice wall that comes off the ocean. It goes in thousands and thousands of miles. That's the big catch. The Americans were looking for this thing for the better part of 30 years. They sent down the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, Admiral Byrd. And he flew around in planes for 30 years looking for this damn thing. And then when he found it, and of course they're never going to tell you that he found it, then they put in the Antarctic Treaty, the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties that says that no corporation can go down there and set up shop ever for the end of time. It's not even up for review.
What do you think is there? A wall?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Some sort of barrier. But remember, it would be thousands of miles inland from the beach. And so the Antarctic Treaty says that you can't go down there. I mean, yeah, you can go down there and spend 15,000 pounds and get your pictures taken with penguins and crap like that. But eventually, you're not going to be able to run amok. And that made so much sense to me because this world is based on greed and money and power. And yet, in fact, if you want to start fracking in my backyard next week, you could make that happen if you're an oil and gas company. But those same companies aren't even allowed to talk about Antarctica. When have you ever seen that? Ever? But why does British Petroleum not go down to Antarctica? They can't.
So the way you described it, then it's kind of like the limits of the boundaries of a video game. So do you believe that we're in some kind of simulation?
Yep. Yeah, I do. But most of the time,
what is your definition of a simulation?
My definition of simulation, well, I was in the video game industry for years. I mean, I used to play video games for a living. I was a video game producer, and they're all striving to be the same thing, which is a virtual reality that the player cannot break out of. Once you are immersed in it, there's no way to get out because you weren't the access to it, your memory of it was blocked. So, and by the way, when I got into this whole flat Earth model, I'd love to talk about simulations, but most people don't get it. Meaning, look, it's been 20 years since the Matrix, and people still don't understand the concept of the Matrix. But all the entertainment companies are trying to build in some sort of virtual reality. We've seen it in like Ready Player One and Free Guy and stuff like that. But it's almost impossible to do because you can't hook up the other senses. But we can build visually amazing worlds right now. I mean, you've seen them out there. The latest GTA, which I don't play because of the whole crime aspect, is a beautiful game. And we can do some wonderful, wonderful stuff. And yes, if it is flat and it is enclosed, it's probably virtual. No question. The double slit experiment is a big tell of that.
I don't think people in general have much of a problem with simulation theory. I think Elon Musk said it. It's quite mainstream, isn't it? This idea that it's very, very likely we live in a simulation. I think what people find hard is this flat world idea, because so many people in our simulation, if we are in a simulation, would have to be lying for that to be true.
Oh, well, or NPCs. Which is the concept behind Free Guy. But yeah, and by the way, a lot of people, again, what you just said, it's a paradox. Lots of people can understand now the virtual realities, but what people forget is video games are based on completely flat models, meaning there are no curves in video games. You just don't know any better because, well, it's like, well, you can't see the curve. And it's also completely, it's not even a snow globe. It's boxed off. The skybox system is what they do with the ceiling. Like everything has right angles because computers can't understand circles. They hate them. They only deal with right angles, which is why pixels are perfectly square. So it's this weird paradox, in video games, like for example, we have to put in the distance, we have to put in haze in the distance, fake atmosphere, so you can't see too far, which also ties into what we're dealing with our real world. Well, our real world, which is you can't see too far because the atmosphere thickness. Lots of people will say, and I'm ignoring the chat, which is why can't you see Japan from California? Why can't you see Europe from New York? And why can't you see Mount Everest from everywhere? Well, it's because you're not breathing in nothing. What we're breathing in right here is a gas. It's a couple gases. It's mostly nitrogen, a little bit of oxygen, and some trace gases. And that gets thickness, gains thickness over time. No different than water. Why, when you dive, if you've ever dived with anybody, at 200 feet down, you can't see the sun, even on a bright summer day. Same thing with the atmosphere.
So in the chat, they're asking about your religious beliefs, which ties into my next question, which is, if we are in a simulation, who designed it and what is the purpose of it? I mean, what are we?
Okay. No, it's a good one. And I'm glad you guys got to that, which is who built it and why? It's probably the most important question. Most people get around the flat part, which is it can only be one of two answers. One is an older and more powerful civilization than ourselves, obviously, kind of like the movie Contact, or the divine. And at that point, you're kind of splitting hairs because one man's advanced tech is another man's deity. So do I think God is a programmer? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. We didn't invent programming. And some of the design features of this place are amazing. Do I believe in God? Yes, I do. Was I raised in a born-again evangelical Christian home? Yeah, I was. But I fell away from that when I got into tech for obvious reasons. And then got pulled kind of not back into the church, but back into spirituality when I got into this. Because if it was built, if it was created like this, then it was created by someone. And this just screams intelligent design. And science doesn't want to go there, which, it's the opposite of what science says. Science says you're on a little tiny spinning ball covered in a little bit of water and smoke flying through an impossible universe. And you're just left over from the Big Bang. And we say, no, it's probably the easier option, which is this. And it's 99.99% of the people believe the illusion, like the Matrix or the Truman Show or one of those things. And that's what you go with. I mean, and by the way, who's to say there is space? Why can't it just be this sitting on somebody's desk? Who's to say there isn't 7 billion little tiny things living in that thing right now? And one more thing, the planetarium argument, which is when you go into a planetarium, and I know that kind of dates me, you are looking at a projection on a screen. All this, does the moon look spherical? Yes. Can you land on it? No. Why not? Because it's just an image on the ceiling. And if you brought somebody in from, I don't know, an old school Amish community that's never seen tech in their life, they would just blow their minds, right? It's like, holy smokes. What is wrong with it? Why does the sky look like this? It's like, no, it's an illusion.
Mark, here's my issue with this. It feels like there are two separate theories. One is simulation theory and one is flat Earth theory. Sure. And a lot of your arguments point to simulation theory, which I think a lot of people are right behind, that it could be real, that we could be just something on someone's desk. I think a lot of people do agree with that. But flat Earth theory seems to suggest, just by its name, that we're not in a simulation, which a lot of people think as well, okay, we're not, but the Earth is flat. Right. And a lot of your, for example, the Van Allen belt trap, right? And you said this scientist just ran away. Well, I looked up literally for about 30 seconds before coming on here. I said, what's the Van Allen belt trap? I don't know what that is. It's a bit of radiation that if you go through, it can be dangerous, right? But there are huge gaps that you can go through that aren't as strong radiation. There are parts of it. And that took me 10 seconds. Now, who do we believe? You're right. I'm just believing that information, right? I understand that that's what you're probably thinking. But at the end of the day, as human beings, I suppose on the one hand, we have to be vigilant against, government could be lying to us and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, surely we go with the scientists of today. I mean, how sure are you, Mark, out of 100? How sure are you of flat Earth theory?
Oh, 99.999%. I used to be only like 95% when I started this thing. But the reinforcement I got from the subject matter experts, which I interviewed on my channel, and they came to me unsolicited, they all said the same thing. And
but it's dangerous. 99.999% about anything is very dangerous, isn't it? That's, Dunning-Kruger levels. That's like, being the more sure you are suggests you want to believe it.
No. 0.0001%. Of course, anyone can be wrong on just about anything.